everybody, Patrick Connor here, and welcome to the Knuckles and Gloves podcast. I'm here with my boy Aris Pina, CompuBox operator and fellow fight fanatic, as you all know. Aris, what's up, man? How you doing?
Everything's good, my man. Everything's really good. And yourself?
Doing all right, dude. We had a good, pretty good heavyweight clash a couple days ago, this past weekend, and I mean, for once, we're here to only minimally talk about boxing history. I mean, if we can help it, I guess. But nah, Oleksandr Usyk rematch with Anthony Joshua, pretty good clash between big men for the heavyweight championship. I mean, depending on how you feel about this Tyson Fury retirement business, but
it was a compelling fight. Very, very compelling.
it was a good fight, dude. I mean, what was the story of the fight as far as you're concerned? Like, I mean, I'd imagine you agreed with the decision and whatnot.
No, I'm like Spencer Oliver. You outboxed the shit out of him, AJ. You outboxed him. If you're on Twitter, I'm sure you've probably seen that clip where everyone's just giving AJ a bunch of delusional bullshit after the fight, But nah, Usyk clearly won the fight. He won it with some room to spare. But Joshua, to his credit, I did think did a lot better in the rematch than he did in the
agree.
first fight. He made some adjustments. Just that Usyk is just on another level, and there's nothing wrong with that, man. He's a special talent. He's an absolutely special talent, and proves he proves that you don't need a stupid division like Bridgerweight to dominate at a heavyweight, especially in this era with giants like that, because Usyk is not a big heavyweight. He's a big guy, but he's not a giant compared to guys like that. And look at the way he was able to do something with Joshua, man. So it was compelling, man. There was a lot of questions. A lot of Joshua came in. He scoured the earth, trying to find a new trainer. Talked about everything, how he had to change himself and find himself again, and all that. And in the beginning of the fight, he definitely, you could see there was a little bit of adjustments he was making. He was more aggressive. The pressure he was putting on, the body work he was putting in there. But Usyk, to his credit too, man, he's one of those guys. I'm not going to use mechanics. Had to keep on repeating over and over of dialing in information or whatever stupid shit that's called. I just hate that comment. I hated it with Lomachenko. I hated it with everyone else when they're just dialing in info or whatever they call that. Like it's ridiculous. But
they're turning on the modem, fucking doing the motherfucking robot. The downloading information and something in the Matrix. Fucking
he's in the Matrix now. He downloaded that information. It's 3 rounds. Now watch him. No,
well, for the record, our boy Corey Urban, who was on the call of that heavyweight championship fight, was not the one who made that comment. Thank goodness. We're good. But
Corey did an incredible job.
No, that was, dude, I'm very proud of Corey. That was awesome.
And he did a dream that we'd all love to have too. That you got to announce a heavyweight championship.
I mean, dude, like who can? And it could not be a nicer dude, a better dude,
a better guy. Absolutely.
Yeah, great guy. He deserves it. But no, like back to the whole. Yeah, I totally agree. Usyk was kind of dialing in there. Sorry, but you have the. As soon as you start going with the downloading information, it's just like, oh, you get PTSD, you get triggered.
So the first few rounds, Usyk wasn't doing a ton. Joshua wasn't either, but he was being more active. You saw the pressure he was putting on, and you can see that he had more confidence in what he was doing, especially as he had some success to the body. But I noticed something. I'll ask you, Pat, if you noticed the same thing. It was after round 4. When Usyk finally decided to turn it up a little bit of a notch. He started landing his left hand a little bit more, get a little bit more active. He clearly won the round. And you saw a look on Joshua's face where he knew, okay, now it begins. And when they sat down, you had to really listen. But Joshua made a key, what I thought was a key comment. He sat there and he goes, "He's clever. He's really clever." And
I actually didn't hear that.
Yeah, I heard that right after the round ended. Joshua, really briefly, you hear Joshua go, "He's clever," and it's like he knew. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be in for another long night again. Like I'm sure he saw the confidence that he was gonna win, but he also knew then that like things were just turning ever so slightly, and he's gonna have to like adjust again.
Yeah, and I think that you made a good point earlier. So many crazy things happened during this rematch. Afterward, I think that what happened afterward has kind of dominated the discussion, unfortunately. But Well, it was distracting, dude, and it distracted from the fact of one of the points you made earlier was that this was further confirmation that you don't need a bridger weight, you don't need a super heavyweight, you don't need any of those things, and that time and again, skill, it might not necessarily automatically beat size, but it can. It totally can, and in a lot of situations will. And so I think that like this was just once again, we already saw that in the first fight. So we already know it's possible, blah, blah, blah. But it was just further confirmation that, Usyk is that guy. But yes, I do think AJ did make some adjustments that were pretty key, pretty critical, and that he had some pretty good notable success early on in the fight doing different things rather than like I think that his body language is so telling, partially because he's so like muscle bound and shit like that. I mean, but also he looked really relaxed in the first couple rounds. Like he was like countering, and he was countering with combinations, and I was like, yo, he's looking good. Like this might be some trouble for Usyk, man. But of course, like you said, a couple rounds in, Usyk starts dialing it in. Like he was like, he's the kind of fighter, and it's not like he's the only fighter like this. But when stuff starts not going his way, he doesn't just allow it to keep sliding in that
Not at
direction.
all, man.
Like, and I get it. Like, I'm not trying to be overly critical, but we've seen time and again a fight starting to get out of a fighter's hands, and it's almost kind of like that fighter has the potential to do something, anything, and they're not. They're just following the pattern. They're just doing it. And Usyk's not that kind of guy. As soon as he began realizing that AJ was having that kind of success, he started doing other things. He started landing to the body more. He started working his left hand in because he was mostly working off his jab in the first handful of rounds and just kind of using his left hand sparingly. And so always having something in your back pocket, always being able to make that adjustment, whatever the adjustment is, even if it just is an adjustment, is so important. And that's one of the reasons why we keep seeing guys like Anthony Joshua, in my opinion, falling short, is one of the reasons why we see a guy like Usyk having so many options and being able to make adjustments like that without thinking, is that he has been fighting since he's younger. So I mean, that not to validate the things that AJ was saying after the fight per se, but I do think that some of those things were true, that Usyk does have a lot of those automatic movements down, like a Vasily Lomachenko, who's, doesn't have to think before doing a lot of things. Doesn't mean they're unbeatable, but you can see Anthony Joshua actually thinking in there. And it's almost like once the thinking started happening a couple rounds in and he couldn't counter anymore and stuff like that, he went from loose to tighten up again. All of a sudden he tightened up. He was waiting too much, following him around. And I mean, again, that's because of what Usyk was doing.
It's really tough when you're trying to play chess with a guy
Exactly.
that has an IQ of equivalent like Bobby Fischer in there.
Exactly. Kasparov's going off on your ass right now, and he's fucking queen to rook fucking 19 or whatever the fuck. I don't know chess, but point is, but yeah.
Look, I live in 100%. New York City, and I love watching the chess hustlers in Union Square and Washington Square Park all the time. So I'm not going to say I'm a chess expert, but at least I have an idea of what's going on out there.
It's cool, especially when you're watching people who play chess and know what they're doing. It's pretty cool to watch. Just like boxing, though, just like here. And I think that's a really good it's a good analogy. And you could see it anytime Anthony Joshua was making a movement, Usyk's like slide, slide, slide. It's so tough to fight that fucking style, as we could see. So it was
the adjustments, man. A guy that can make
a booger, man,
on the fly and just piece things together immediately after. Okay, I see what he's doing now. I'm going to pick off of this and start working with that. You have to adjust off of that. And he's so quick-minded to know to work off of it. Like, you can't keep up with a person like that. That's what's the difficult part. And that Joshua, that was his problem throughout the fight. Like, yes, he fought with more confidence, but you can, like you just said, Pat, he was also like thinking way too much. You know what I mean? In between gaps, and that would cost him rounds because him overthinking would make him not throw as much, and Usyk would be able to do what he wanted to do in there. And that's always kind of like he was almost like caught between styles, like the old Joshua where he was like more of a seek and destroy guy and more of the safety first guy that he's become after getting knocked out by Andy Ruiz. And it's like he showed a little bit of both, but he needed to revert obviously much more back to the old Joshua that he was. to really just you got to take the risk like that, even if you're gonna get countered, hitting stuff. But like he was still doing good, and he still had his moments in the fight. Like there was like a lot of people that thought the fight was still up for grabs in the middle rounds. I thought by that point Usyk, even though the fight might be close on the cards, I thought that Usyk, had already shown that
He had the momentum.
yes, the momentum totally. But it was around round 9, right? Round 8, definitely round 9, where Joshua turned up, and it looks like, initially it looked like at least that Usyk was in trouble, and that Joshua might be able to pull this out.
He started going to the body, and that's like, let's say Lennox Lewis, good example. Vladimir Klitschko, really big heavyweights who were effective without really going to the body all that much. They jabbed to the body. Lennox went to the body maybe a little bit more than Vladimir Klitschko did, but overall, not really taking many risks as far as going to the body. And that's
Mhm.
something that we saw from Anthony Joshua at a couple points during the fight, and they were exactly the points where he was having success. That's not to say that Oleksandr Usyk is weak to the body. It's just to say that the guy's 250 fucking pounds and nailing you with fucking massive punches. The body, it hurts. So yeah, it clearly
Was, man, like any type of giant leaning up all over you and doing that type of stuff and landing punches like that.
it's a big guy. It's a
At least he
big
didn't
fucking
pull a
guy.
Claymore Carnera, when with Tommy Lochran just step on his toe and break his toe immediately, right?
Yeah, I mean, like unless you are a master craftsman, like a Lochran or something like that, it's that size does matter usually. But yeah, we've clearly seen that with Usyk, he can make, at least to a degree, he can make it not matter. And yeah, to see him, that was what was kind of amazing, was that right when Anthony Joshua looked as if like, oh, like, there's some fucking danger here, bro. Right as if it started looking like he might be able to seize it back, or at least make it like a real fight out of it, Usyk rubber banded back and turned up himself. That was what's like, that's crushing. That's just so psychologically crushing to a fighter, I would imagine, that there you are finding like a second win and you're having success. And then the guy who's smaller than you and has already beaten you before just goes, no. It's like, fuck. All right. Well, so I could totally see how frustration and whatnot could lead to what we saw after the fight, because that momentum was totally shut off by Usyk in the last few rounds. And to actually even, sorry, but to actually even have who was it, Glenn Feldman? Uh I mean, the fact that we even know these judges' names is absurd in and of itself, because it means they've done something wrong in some point in the past. But it's like, to clearly Usyk was going to have to turn in a spectacular performance to get a dominant win on the cards, because at least one judge was looking for something for Anthony Joshua, despite the fact that Usyk closed strong.
Put it this way, man. I've learned over the years, if you hear, we've been watching boxing for many decades, for a few decades now. If you hear a judge and you recognize that name from when you first started watching boxing in the 90s, there's a good chance they're going to send in a bullshit scorecard because they're just incompetent and have no business scoring anymore. So, case in point, what happened Saturday. But back to your point, with round 9, it looked, initially from first viewing, it looked like Usyk was actually a little hurt. I mean, Joshua was landing some solid body shots. Usyk was leaning over. Joshua was doing really good work. It was the best work he had done in all the fight that they had, from the first fight to the second fight. All the frustration that he had, it was, I wouldn't say, obviously it's very not the same thing, but like, when a guy finally gets success after like rounds and rounds of just, pure frustration, getting just pissed off the whole time. Kind of like how Dempsey felt when he knocked down Tunney finally in their rematch. Kind of like that. Like Joshua, you saw the confidence in his face after that round, after round 9. Like he finally got some damage done. He had Usyk visibly like, a little bit weary on the ropes, and there was a dominant round for him. And it looked like the momentum was firmly on his side at that point. And if you go by boxing Twitter, a lot of people were starting to feel the same way. Like, holy shit, Joshua might be able to pull this out. And then Usyk came back in that next round, man, and talk about some awesome recuperative powers himself. Because, like you said, dude, he not only did he come back in that round as a bounce back round, he really whooped Joshua's ass. Like, I've mentioned before on the show when we've talked about ourselves that like Usyk, what makes him such a great fighter is that like you can tell when he really wants to turn it on and when he doesn't. Like he has levels to him, you know what I mean? The guy is so gifted, he doesn't have to pull it to like, he doesn't have to put it to 100% sometimes. And after what Josh, and like you said, he's the type of guy that like if you get a little bit on him, he's going to want to get some get back immediately. Guys like Terrence Crawford have that mentality, other fighters like people at that elite level. And Usyk really showed it that next round because he realized he lost that ninth round. Joshua got some good shots on him and clearly won it. And that next round, man, Usyk came out there just flurrying. Like you wouldn't even believe a guy that just got beat up the way he did. Most heavyweights wouldn't be able to come out that next round as fresh as Usyk did. Not only did he come out, he's landing combination at will. He had Joshua leery and weary at the end of it. Like that was Usyk's best round of all the rounds that they had in all those fights. Like he was whooping on him. And at that point too, I think Joshua just kind of said to himself, like, shit, like, what else can I do with this man? And that's, kind of shows the gap right there. Though Usyk is on another level. You know what I mean? For him to be able to bounce back like that and really turn it on and show to himself, hey man, I'm not gonna let you like get an edge like that. Like I'm gonna take immediately back, if not just make it even more dominant, really is a testament to him.
It really is, dude. Like, it's crazy that he's like what 19-0, 20-0 now.
Yeah.
It's just wild that he's accomplished as much as he has in such a short period of time. In those divisions too. But it's clearly he demonstrated why. He demonstrated precisely why he's been able to do what he's been able to do. And I'd love to see years and years from him, but it doesn't sound like that's in the cards. I mean, that's unfortunate, but I get it. He had a long amateur career, but that's also why he's so skilled and why he looks the way that he does. Going into those last few rounds, I personally didn't feel like the fight was up for grabs. There was a little bit of a mixed bag on Twitter as I was watching the fight, just because I mean there always is. Some of it was bias, I'm sure. But I mean, I think what winds up happening, and we've noted this phenomenon before, and other people have too, where like it happens from round to round, but also from fight to fight. I think where if a fighter does better in this round than he did in the last round, it's like, oh, he's winning the round, even though they might not be winning the round. They're just doing better. And it's like, it's almost kind of like that kind of bias or that kind of taints your scorecard a bit. And that's what it felt like with a lot of this fight, where like, yeah, Joshua was doing better for sure, and then he did in the first fight, but Usyk was still lighting him up in a lot of those rounds too. Like, and it wasn't like he was kicking his ass, but he was landing harder, he was landing cleaner.
Gives me major De La Hoya Mayweather vibes when you talk like that. You know what I mean? Imagine if Twitter was around. If you think about it, if Twitter was around when De La Hoya fought Mayweather,
my God, dude, even now when I post about that, like people get like angry and they're just like, Oscar won that fight. And I'm like, that was such a clear,
if I remember, no, definitely not.
That was such a clear like 9-3, 8-4 type of win for Floyd. Get out of here, dude.
So if like boxing Twitter was going on back then, the way De La Hoya would jab him to the ropes and then throw a flurry of not
yeah, just doing a bunch of karate chopping.
Yeah, totally. Oh man.
Yeah, dude, just it exactly. And that's the kind of stuff where I remember also during Hopkins De La Hoya, for instance. And I mean, it's not the exact same kind of thing, but I remember in one of the rounds, can't remember which one it was like third or fourth or something like that. Toward the end of the round, Oscar lands a jab. And Jim Lampley goes, and there's a jab. The jab wins him the round. And I remember we're watching it in my buddy's living room, and all of us were like, no, like as soon as he did that, because it was like, what?
That
but
fight was close on the cards when Hopkins ended it, wasn't it?
It was, but it like the last like 4 rounds, Hopkins was starting to kind of zero in and like, not beat him up, but he was cornering him.
For whatever reason, man, big fights always have to have close scorecards, even if they're not close fights. It doesn't, I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't get it, but it doesn't make any sense. But for whatever reason, that's what they were looking for, and that's what we got. But I mean, that unfortunately also opened the door. So we got a split decision in a fight that both you and I believe was, if not dominant, at the very least clear. It was for Oleksandr Usyk.
It was competitive but clear.
like a good 8-4, like a good 8-4, in my opinion.
And
And
that's like
so,
being generous, yeah.
and if you get to like 8-4, it's like, yeah, you only need a couple of like, a couple of rounds that are really close and you don't know how to score them and you give them to the other guy. And yeah, sure, you get it like a draw or something like that. But like,
But I
anyway,
would, in my opinion, I'm sure
it's a
you would
stretch.
agree. In my opinion, I'm sure you would agree. I think all the rounds, even the ones that were a little bit closer, there was like a person that clearly won it.
Yes, I don't think that there were a whole lot of rounds that were like, I don't know how to score that round. Most of them were, I,
Totally.
I don't know. I mean, everybody has their own little scoring criteria or whatever, right? But I feel like if you're going on just like clean punches, hard punches, I don't know how you could go really on anything else, but in any point, yeah, or in any way, that's what it seemed like to me. It seemed like Usyk came away with the fight and should have gotten a unanimous decision, but what we get is what we get, and we can't get that upset, I guess. Nah, fuck that guy, fucking Glenn Feldman. What the fuck, bro? But
No, man. I said, dude, you find judges that clearly you remember when you were
fuck.
young. Like Glenn Feldman was around clearly in the early '90s and all that other stuff. Like if you're still judging, if you weren't young back then and you're
It,
still judging today,
and we've recently talked about this a couple of different times because of a couple of different shitty officiating situations where
I would love to
not
get our buddy Gray Johnson back on to talk about this type of stuff because he would definitely break it down.
oh man, he knows so much. He deals directly with so many of
Yeah,
these commissions too.
absolutely.
And I mean, look, you're not trying to be ageist. I'm not trying to be ageist. Nothing against old or elderly people. It's all good. But the thing is, like, when you look on the list of officials for any given state and the average age is like 76 or something, it's like, dude, I mean, really? Like, we don't have anybody younger who's interested or could. I mean, I know because the answer when we say things like this, people are like, oh, well, you got to like referee so many times, you got to judge so many times before they let you do these fights. And I'm like, bro, yeah, but it doesn't take like 4 decades, bro. Like, come on, we're not dumb here, dude. So
No,
anyway,
man, like you really didn't need to have Arthur Mercanti still refereeing in the early 2000s. All right, Arthur Mercanti Senior, about what I'm talking.
yes, well,
Okay.
and there's some debate as to whether or not juniors should be out there doing that shit right now.
Too,
So,
yeah. So,
so
or like
well,
having, or like trotting out Zach Clayton, who
oh,
refereed,
bro,
who refereed like Walcott as a Charles title change, and there he is in the '80s, still wobbling
I
around.
know. Yeah,
Like
he was so rickety, poor guy. Yeah, I mean it's again, it's nothing against older people, but it just doesn't really seem
it's
to make a lot
no,
of sense. And on
absolutely.
top of that, it's not just the fact that anybody's any particular age, is that they're consistently bad. They're consistently bad. If I'm consistently bad at my job, I lose my job. And it just doesn't make sense that these people are anyway. We don't need to go on a big rant.
Well,
I
he
know
was
I'm ranting,
questioned
but
after the fight too. Remember, I think it was who was it on Twitter that posted up that he questioned Rob, I think.
oh, a handful of people did, but yeah, no, I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember because I saw that tweet too.
But they questioned it, and they were just, he was like, "Oh no," and then he had his supervisor hop in really quick to defend him. "Oh no, it was a close fight. Swing rounds here and
Oh
there."
yeah, yeah. It was Rob. It was Rob Tebbett.
Rob,
Yeah,
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 Rob.
yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, kudos to him for questioning that because most people don't actually, go for that.
yeah.
But it's just funny the way they go and just try to defend these guys, like you were just kind of alluding to. You know what I mean?
Well,
Instead of,
and
yeah,
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm not defending it, but there is a reason for that. A handful of years ago, the commissions, I guess, somewhat arbitrarily decided that after fights, they would not allow judges or referees to speak with media, that they would discourage that. And so they're not supposed to, and they're supposed to say you got to speak with the supervisor or something like that, which is obviously a cop out and stupid, but there is precedence for it. And so it's not like unheard of that they're like, I'm not going to talk about it. So, I mean, I'm again not defending it, but that's
totally.
kind of just the standard now.
I swear that there was a fight though, man. I don't remember who it was a very high profile judge, like one that generally everybody in boxing kind of remembers, but I don't remember his name off the top of my head, unfortunately. And I feel like he was interviewed on HBO or something after a big fight and really controversial fight, and he spoke on it.
Oh,
And
I don't know.
it might have
I
been Jerry Roth. It might have been one of those guys. I don't know, man. But like, I say Jerry Ross because like I think he's in the Hall of Fame. Somehow they put a judge in the Hall of Fame.
And then there's old poor Chuck Giampa, the mind of a judge,
Yeah.
the mind of a judge. When he froze up on Showtime, poor guy.
Jesus. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was rough, dude. That was tough to watch. But no, I
No, not to go off veer off course really quick. You know what, man? Last night I was watching just randomly watching a thing of like it was a 1986 amateur meetup between the USA team and Russia, and I want to say Jampa was one of the judges. And they were talking about how he was going to be there in Seoul in '88. They're like, yeah, he's a great judge, knows what he's doing, all this stuff, and like, yeah.
yeah, and then you knowing what happened, I don't think that was
And
him that did that.
Michael Moore was one of the young. He was 18 years old fighting on that card, and he got robbed badly against a Russian kid who whooped his ass. And I think he got robbed probably by Jampa too on that card.
Should have known back in the
I'm
80s.
late last night, man, just scrolling, couldn't sleep. It's like 1:30 in the morning, and I'm watching USA against Russia in 1986.
It sucks that even we have to, after a heavyweight championship fight, dude. I'll put it. I'll at least I'll try to be positive here. It sucks that we have to talk about officials, but at the very least, I guess if we have to be positive, at least we're not afterwards talking about, I can't believe how a heavyweight championship fight was decided by the fact that the dick howls on the fucking ring apron that were advertising the fight we were already watching were super slippery and everybody was falling on it. What the fuck, bro? Wow. And I mean, that kind of links into, before we get to the post fight,
Dave Arkin when you need him. Rest in peace.
before we get to the post fight rant, because we do need to address that. And we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but I feel like it is a big elephant in the roomy kind of thing. The fact that this fight took place in Saudi Arabia, dude. Again, we don't need to go heavy onto it, but like that, the ickiness of it, the ickiness of the sports washing side of it is one thing. But it's like the production itself didn't seem super great either. A lot of the stuff clearly was done like remote, that a lot of the people were not on site, which whatever, it's all good. But a lot of the stuff was done remote. A lot of the kind of production was like there was a ton of waiting, a shitload of downtime between fights. So I was struggling to stay
And
awake.
up till
And like
recently, they weren't even sure where it was going to be broadcast in the U.S. Correct?
it was like a week ago, about a week ago, that they announced that it was going to be on DAZN, period.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know what they're advertising these other events during the event, like they're advertising F1, they're advertising the golf, the LIV golf, they're advertising all of these other events during the show, makes it super fucking awkward. Yeah, like I said, we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it, dude, but it was not great. And that's not a precedent I'd really like to see set, but unfortunately it sounds like they're going to be, staging, it's going to be a regular thing.
Well, they did say they're going to be. They're holding the Zerto Romero's fight right against Bivol, or is that going to be in Dubai or something?
I think that's in Dubai is what
Okay.
they said.
Oh, that's in Dubai.
Damn, now I'm gonna
Well,
have to look, but in any case, it's headed to the Middle
here's
East.
the thing, man. Like for the show we're gonna do later this week when we talk about tragic case of Davy Moore, we're gonna touch upon what went down with like Sun City in the early 80s, Sun City, South Africa, and how they became a major player and how they were very controversial in the world considering what was going on with apartheid and how they still had lots of money. So boxing, being boxing how it is, people still found a way to try to make some kind of profit out of it. And we kind of see the same thing going on over here too, I guess, right? History kind of repeating itself when you think about it.
Yep.
And it's not the only boxing's not the only entity who's been traveling to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, like I said, golf and F1. Yeah.
WWE for many years now have been doing the same thing. And it's actually pretty hysterical when they first started going over there that the people that they requested make appearances, half of them were dead, including guys like Yokozuna and Andre and Ultimate Warrior and a few others that they thought were still alive and well in wrestling. But anyways, yeah, it's where there's money to be made, people just kind of lose whatever thoughts they have in terms of what's going on over there and turn a blind eye to it. There's always going to be protests. There's always going to be people, raising awareness to what's going on. but boxing being boxing, usually who gives a shit?
It's I'm not going to lie. It's not an easy conversation to have, and I'm not going to pretend like I have the right answers or even really any answer. All I know is that at some point everybody's going to have to every boxing fan they can choose to not think about it. Sure, anybody can choose to ignore it. Most people I think do. And that's okay. But if you don't ignore it, if you choose to think about it, you are going to have to at some point make some decision as far as like a line in the sand or whatever is like what your limit is or whatever, right? Because if you take it down far enough, boxing itself is exploitative, and it's tough to get around that if you break it down enough. And so you start getting to a point where like, well, should we have boxing in America then? Should we have boxing in Saudi Arabia? Should we have boxing in China? Should we, et cetera? And they're obviously pulling fight cards from a lot of fight cards from Russia right now. And I'm not saying that I'm against or for any of those things per se. I'm just saying that it is a tricky conversation to have. And that sometimes saying, well, there's a history of it, that's just a way to kind of shut the conversation down. Like that's not really a response. Like, we know there's a history of it. So then what? What's the next move in that conversation? And I guess that's what you have to decide. Are you okay with watching Oleksandr Usyk versus Anthony Joshua from Jeddah? Some people were not and did not watch it, and that's their right. But at the very least, there should be some sort of conversation about it, and the people who raise it should not be shouted down, should not be shamed into because they said some shit. But what the conversation is, I don't know. That being said, getting to this post-fight rant, man, it was epic. It was good. It was, I mean, not good, like bad good.
It was boxing. That's what it was.
It was entertaining. It was train wrecky.
Look, man, Joshua has always been one of those guys. This isn't the first time he's lost now, so he's been prone to like a little off kilter post fight, whatever. But like this took it to another level, man.
Yeah.
I think everybody collectively was just going, "What in the actual hell is going on there?" Because at first off, he took the mic and he started like going off a little bit. Oh, whatever it's gonna be like. He didn't really like he was on the right side. He was talking about what's going on in the Ukraine and everything like that. I'm like, okay, like he's taking the moment away from Usyk a little bit, but like at least he seems like he's on on the right spot for this. So like, it's okay. And then he started going off. All right, before you like it, and just there was like levels to it. You know what I mean? Almost like again like a music solo. Like it was started slow and then it built, and before you know it, you're just kind of going like, wait, what? And I remember tweeting to somebody after the fight. It was like after Joshua's rant was over, I felt like I took a trip on a whirly gig. Like I just, my brain was completely scrambled. I was like, what in the fuck did I just watch? I wasn't drunk. I wasn't high. I wasn't anything. I was just utterly confused. I was one of those memes that you just sit there and you just kind of like,
yeah, man, it was awkward. What I excuse me, I initially thought that he was it seemed like he was mad and he thought he got the decision, then he was getting pissed off at Usyk about that, but then because it sounded like he was saying something like, how could you beat me? Like, how, or you're so skilled, but how could you beat me? That's what it sounded like he was saying at first. And so I was kind of like, oh no, dude, he's starting to fucking, be a jerk about the decision. Oh, that sucks. And then he grabbed the microphone and I was like, oh, maybe not. Oh no. And like it it went from like maybe not, maybe this is gonna be okay to no, this is not okay. And look, dude, like he went from praising Usyk to like kind of going off the rails about like him starting boxing late and
it was a wild ride, man.
it was kind of
there was a lot of dips and turns in that. There was
yeah,
like,
he didn't really stay on
cursing a
on
lot.
topic.
He was getting angry. At one point, he yelled at Usyk to back up because this was his time, and Usyk just wanted his flag back. And you could tell if you watched, Usyk looked kind of visibly annoyed. Like he wasn't saying.
At first he was just like
Yeah.
like straight faced, and then when Anthony Joshua turned around and he had the flag on still, Usyk like was like, Yep. Fucking grabbed that shit right off and was like, no, 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 not with my flag, buddy. You ain't doing that shit with my flag. And you
Then
know,
he started just going on, and it wouldn't stop, and no one was going to take the mic away from him and do anything like that. But it's just kind
that's
of
what that's what got me was that he was like, hey, cut the music, give me the microphone. And they did. Like, not only did they cut the music, but they also gave him the mic. What the fuck? Bro, I mean, somebody, like, whether it's his team or the production or something, like, come on, bro. Like, you've worked in production. You know they could cut the audio or something. Like, come on, dude. This is anyway, it seemed like there were a lot of
Oh,
people.
they would like people like me, the lowest of the lowest pull, would be the ones that would have to like run up there and do that and like risk ourselves for that.
Well, that wouldn't have happened on
That's
dude.
yeah.
Jim Gray would have gotten punched. Like
Oh,
look, I don't like Jim Gray as much as anybody else, but when it you remember when who was it? Was it Adrian Broner who tried to take the microphone? He was like, nah, fucking yanked
Tony,
it.
Tony
What's that?
threatened to beat him up. Tony threatened to beat
Yep,
him up.
that's yeah. Well, that was different because
Um,
yeah, Tony yanked the microphone from him and was like, "No, this is mine."
Broner just verbally abuses him. That's what that is. Yeah.
But Merchant wouldn't allowed that shit either. He'd have been like, "What the fuck are you doing?" So it was just strange that so many layers of like security or whatever let that happen.
It just like went on and on. So he was like talking about how brilliant Usyk was, and now you got to take losses and what he started with and what he has to do. And I prepared. He said no other heavyweight in the world would have beat me this night, but he did. Like it was almost like he was trying to process everything, but he couldn't process that he
Right.
actually lost. But
Exactly.
uh, a guy like, look, I'm not gonna play some kind of like psychoanalysis over here, but like a person like Joshua, he with so many people around him that build him up the way he does and how he's been built, and since the Olympics winning the gold medal and everything else like that, for him to lose twice to a guy now that he seemingly can't be, I'm sure that just like kind of really fucks with him. You know what I mean? And I don't know. That was just a show of emotion immediately afterwards. Like, it was bewildering. Some people wanted to compare it to something like Oliver McCall kind of falling apart during the Lennox Lewis fight, but like those were two totally different scenarios.
Yeah, that's a pretty specific set of circumstances,
Yeah,
you know.
and I get the reason why you would say something like that, because you're trying to like think of another time when someone just kind of went off the kilter a little bit, but like McCall was literally pulled out of either a crack house or a rehab for that rematch. He had just no business being in the ring. He was going through major outside the ring issues when Don King got this fight offered, and he was like, you know what, we got to put McCall in there. So that's a completely different scenario. AJ just it was like he couldn't accept the loss. So like the fact that he heard a split decision, he lost it again. The fact that the preparation that he put into this fight, that he thought there was no way he was going to be able to do it, the adjustments, the bullshit he was saying before the fight. And remember when he was like, "Oh yeah, if he was orthodox, I would have smoked him. The reason why I lost was because of X, Y, and Z, not because of anything he actually did." Yada 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 yada. And now you're just kind of like, bro, really? So
Yeah, and and yet other people wanted to kind of give him a pass on a kind of mental health level or whatever. And I think it's tricky, dude, because you don't know how much of it is that he just got punched for 12 rounds. You don't know how much of it is his ego. You don't know how much of it is, like you said, him trying to just process what just happened, but doing it in real time, kind of like just free, whatever they call it, free writing, whatever, just free verse, just fucking freestyling
bro,
that shit.
because
But
you just never know. You really never know how someone can just react in real time to especially when you put in the amount of effort that AJ did for this in preparation for this. You know what I mean?
yeah, and it's not to say that it's not understandable. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, dude, you get it. I get it. We can understand how somebody, a fighter on this level, could be upset or frustrated or, a mixture of these things and not really know how to express that vocally in front of a big crowd. But regardless of that, regardless of all of that, there is still another person here. Oleksandr Usyk's just fucking standing there after winning the ring heavyweight championship.
And
You know what I
consider
mean?
the shit he's gone through these past few
Yeah. This
everything.
fool was literally just in Ukraine fucking fighting a
Yeah.
war and stepped away so he could fight a heavyweight title fight. Dude, I mean, and that's not to say like there are a lot of icky things. Again, we already talked about that happened with this production, and that's there's a mixture of stuff and it's complex, but nonetheless, there is still another guy here, and so to disregard that other fighter like that, I get that Joshua might have been going through some shit, but what about what Usyk's going through? Is all I'm saying is that that guy just won, and you just lost twice in a row, so you need to wait your fucking turn. Is what it comes down to. So I will say this, and I told you this before we started recording. Whatever happened, yeah, dude, it's weird. It was awkward. It was kind of entertaining and wild. But I will say, Anthony Joshua did apologize, and it did seem like a genuine apology. It wasn't one of those "sorry if I offended you" apologies. It was a fucking, like I fucked up, and I apologize for that, and I'll do better going forward. And it's like you can't really ask for a whole lot more from apologies, so I'll give him that. And
For sure.
I, I just don't like the fact that it's like the third loss and the third tantrum that he's thrown after the loss. It's it's just not a great look considering, you know, you are kind of silver spoony, bro. Like you've had every single one of your pro fights, on some sort of fight deal or some network or app or something. You've made a shit ton of money in a fairly short period of time, and you have the resources to get just about any trainer you want and all that type of stuff. So I mean, it's not like you're not slumming it, bro. Like like it's you've had every opportunity here when it comes to boxing.
Mhm.
So I mean, you kind of need to step back, in my opinion. So I mean, I get the mental
And this
aspect of it.
was probably the biggest one in terms of like in terms of just like having like a breakdown after a fight that he's had. You know, what I mean, like, and considering the stuff he did too, like, I didn't realize immediately after the fight that he threw all the belts down. Like, he grabbed the belts
Yeah,
and then he chucked them
yeah.
down. Like, I was like, really?
I
Why?
for I
Yeah.
Good call. I forgot to mention that because I didn't see that in real time at all
Neither did
either.
I, but no, like, he actually just took them and just threw them down. Like, if I was Usyk and I saw that, I'd be like, dude, are you fucking kidding me? You know, like, I wouldn't even. That was wild seeing that. Like, Joshua really, you know,
Contrast
we,
that.
we we mentioned we talk about how some fighters how it's classless or whatever when they just immediately leave the ring after a fight. But sometimes it might be for the best if that's the way that instead of having something like that as a reaction. But like,
Totally. Contrast that with, Inoue defeating Donaire in their first fight, and Donaire coming to his dressing room, humiliated, weeping, asking if he could just, have his belt, Inoue's belt for a night so that he could fulfill a promise to his kids. You know, Contrast that
yeah, man,
with the kind of
exactly.
petulance and baby shit that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like there are other fighters who've gotten the shit kicked out of them and who've, reacted much better is all. Give
So I mean,
Joshua whatever pass you need, I guess, but I'm just saying.
it was just interesting. Like, before the show started, I told you I was trying to rack my brain because we're history nuts. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, when I know I've seen other people have kind of meltdowns after a fight or whatever it might be. And I was like, when's another time in history where I saw somebody just kind of like not go up? Well, nothing would be like the way Joshua did, but at least just kind of go off kilter a little bit. And I was thinking, I was like, you know what? When Nigel Benn, very popular super middleweight and super middleweight champion from the 90s, whose kid is getting ready to fight Chris Eubank Jr. to renew their rivalry. But when Nigel Benn lost his title, his super middleweight crown, to a very underrated fighter by the name of Tulani Sugarboy Malinga from South Africa in 1996, immediately after that fight, Ben grabs the mic. I had to watch it too because the last time I literally watched that was when watching it live with my dad as a kid on Showtime. But I still remembered it because even as a kid, I remember thinking to myself it was a little odd, as a loser taking over and just kind of doing what he did. But like Ben immediately after the fight, and I mean he was obviously a fucking god in the UK, still is. But like the way he grabbed the mic, he apologized for losing to the fans. He started tearing up. He gave Malinga some credit, said he was awkward, yada yada yada. But then teared up some more, talked about what he did for the country and what he's done for UK boxing. Then announced his retirement, which lasted all of a few months because he was back to fight Steve Collins soon after that. After announcing his retirement, got down on one knee and proposed to his girlfriend. And, that made for a heartwarming moment, all that other stuff. And then when you think it's over, gives the mic back and then comes back and grabs his hands and goes, I have one more thing to say. Walks up to poor Malinga and goes, you need to give me that belt back. They'll send you a new one to they're going to send us another one to South Africa, which is brand new. And then he gives the mic back and walks off. So that was the one comparison I had to myself. I was like, oh yeah, well, oh wow. And I watched it back and I was like, holy shit, he actually did go all out with that. But for whatever reason, Joshua seemed even worse off, like the whole thing. And I still want to see Joshua come back. Like, he's still a viable entity in the heavyweight division. There's so many fights
performance-wise, nothing to be ashamed of.
Not at all, man. But for his psyche, I get it. There's one guy, for a guy like Joshua, I get it. Like, it must be so hard to know that there's a guy out there that, like, two times now, especially the second time when you put everything into it and you still couldn't get over that hump. Like,
yeah, all the training ain't gonna do it. All of the fancy equipment ain't gonna do it. The new methods, the new trainer, new strategy. It didn't do it. And dude, like, we both get it. It's just, it just sucks to have a fighter's moment taken that way. And I feel the same way as, like, when a fighter loses, and then especially when they were beaten by somebody who was, like, not very popular or something like that, and then they immediately retire and they do it on the microphone, and it's like, dude, you just totally shat on that fighter's moment. Like, I get it, but man, that sucks, dude. I just hate seeing stuff like that, because
so do I.
Anyway, to be overshadowed would suck like that. But
Usyk, to his credit, man, he's the king of the world now for this.
And he took it in stride too. All things considered, he took that shit in stride.
Well, I mean, considering everything that he's gone through to reach this point, like you said, man, with the war in the Ukraine right now, and everything else that's happening with him, the fact that not only I can't imagine how many fighters with all the distractions that Usyk had to come with for this fight, that, like, they wouldn't be able to pull up, be at their absolute best. And by their absolute best, they might lose. Because Joshua was at his peak for this fight. He looked great. And most fighters, with everything, all the distractions that they have going on, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be mad if they really had a lot of stuff happening. They want to compete at their peak because of what's happening. Like, I get it. But to Usyk, to his credit, not only surpassed what he did in the first fight, he even brought it to another level. And just, like, that shows, that's such a testament to him and the type of character he is, the fighter he is, and anything. And my God, man, I can't see anybody beating him, including Fury. I want to see that fight more than anything.
Yeah, that was obviously going to be the next point of interest here. What do you think?
So, Fury says he's retired. He's clearly not. Like, I mean, he talks a bunch of bullshit, man. Like, I made the joke on Twitter.
I don't even care at this point, dude. Like, make the fight or shut up. I mean,
when Larry Holmes was, like, calling his retirement every other week after knocking out somebody on Tuesday night fights, it became like a running joke. Fury is the undisputed heavyweight champion, linear champion, whatever you want to call it now. But when you announce your retirement, you give up the ring title, which, however you want to view it, some people don't want to view it as anything. But I mean, honestly, the ring does have lineage there from the man who beat the man who beat the man who beat the man. So if you do give that belt up, and subsequently, I don't know if he's going to give up the WBC belt or not, but that should be non-essential anyways. Like, Usyk is clearly the man right now. Fury announced his retirement. Usyk beat Joshua in a rematch. And if they're going to come back, Usyk has to be looked upon as champion. Fury has a type of ego, I suspect, that, like, he can't handle somebody in the limelight that's going to take his... It's kind of like Muhammad Ali, you know what I mean? Ali was completely used up when he wanted to come back. Fury's not, and that's what makes it so compelling, you know what I mean? Fury still thinks that he's the man, and the fact that, like, someone else has the nerve to become champion and become the dominant guy.
Yeah, it was like,
retire. Yeah.
I just tweeted the other day, like, jokingly, at least half jokingly, I was like, oh, in months now, I'm going to have to worry about defending, like, quote tweeted Tyson Fury retiring. And I was like, man, there's going to be a big argument about this because, somebody's going to something or other. And they're going to say, no, what about Tyson Fury? And it's like, he fucking retired. And people are going to say, no, it's not a real retirement. Because, and it didn't even take months. It took like 9 days or something like that.
Dude, we all know it was bullshit. All right. All you had to do, if like Usyk got really...
as soon as the fight's done, dude, you get this in a fucking dark, like, half smoky room. Look at these dogs. I'll knock them out both in a night. like guys like sounds like he just fucking smoked a pack of crocodiles or
Yeah.
something. What the fuck, bro? Like I don't know. But I don't have any issue with Tyson Fury. It's just so it has to be why does it have to be so needlessly complicated? It doesn't. That's what's so dumb about it, bro. You could have just waited a week and a half and then you guys have a unification or whatever it is, for the undisputed championship. But no, now it's got to be all dumb and complicated. It's lame. I mean,
It's
do
awful,
you
man.
think that fight even happens? Like, honestly, do you think they'll make it?
I don't know. I mean, it being boxing, who knows? It's a big question mark. It's definitely not going to happen anytime soon. Fury loves to play his little mind games and whatever else he's trying to do. So he's going to say he's coming back at one point, probably not. Other stuff, all the complications, money involved, the different factors. It's going to be really, really difficult because, again, this is the sport that we're in. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I hope so because it's the only logical fight that needs to be made. Usyk clearly said that he has no interest in fighting anybody else except for Fury, and he definitely got Fury's interest by beating.
I think he's spot on, dude. I think
Yeah,
he's who else I mean, everybody else in the division needs to fight among themselves. Like no there's no clear, you know what I'm saying? Like no disrespect because I want to at least touch on our boy Big Bang Zhang in a moment, but
yeah.
but there is no clear like number one
And it's
contender
a
or
different
something.
era too, where like guys like Lennox or Mike Tyson or Holyfield would honor a mandatory challenger. Like, could you see, for example, a guy like Tyson Fury or Usyk fighting someone like Von Bean because they're the IBF mandatory challenger, WBA mandatory challenger? Absolutely not.
At this point, probably not. No.
No, totally not. Because what would that do for them? Unless they were forced to do it because there was literally nothing else out there for them at that moment, and they had to do something like what I mean? They wouldn't. It's just something different now. Like these guys aren't really interested in doing. Like a guy like Dillian White, who was the mandatory challenger. That's why Fury took him because that was still a very, very big fight considering where it was. But if that was just like a nondescript American fighter or whoever it might have been to fight that, you think Fury would take that? Not, they don't care about that, especially in this division. And Usyk has made that clear now. He's the Ring Magazine champion. He's the linear champion now since that Fury's retired, and he's just looking for the biggest fight out there and the one fight that's going to send him into retirement and make him content, and that's Fury. Nothing else out there is going to make him do that. A Joseph Parker fight's not going to allow him to do that. A fight with Chisora again, or I can't believe I mentioned that name, but any of the names out there.
Joyce or any of those. Yeah.
Joyce,
Even
yeah.
Wilder is the only one that could
I would
even
love
have
to see that fight.
but
Absolutely,
we
I want to
but
see
we
Wilder with anybody, but
but we still need to see him get through Hellenius, which I'm not saying that that's some big like, ooh, wow. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that it's more about the state of Wilder. You know what I mean? We need to see him bounce back before
and I
anything.
think for whatever reason, man, unless something wild happens, and this is boxing because it could happen, I don't see them two coming across each other anytime soon either because like they just seem like they're on, you know what I mean? It's just on a
Yeah,
whole
they're
other
kind of on different wavelengths right now, I think.
completely different ones. Yeah.
Yeah, Wilder's on a little bit more of a rebuilding mission, I think.
Exactly. So I don't know, man. I hope it happens. And it's a fascinating fight. Fury's such a big guy and he's such a skilled guy that like clearly he can make an impact in the fight. But Usyk's being as incredible as he is too, and man, it's fascinating to think about, but I don't know.
Yeah,
If
I don't really
boxing,
know,
I wouldn't
man.
be surprised they both retire and nothing happens.
Yeah, that would be pretty disappointing, but I guess that would also be kind of on brand for everything that's going on right now. But you know what though? If I were Aegis Klimas or if I were somebody in Usyk's team that has any sort of say as far as what goes on, if we approached Tyson Fury to make the fight and there was any sort of hesitation whatsoever, if there was anything but yeah, let's do that shit and let's get that shit done last week,
Yeah.
retire. Just retire. Don't even like threaten to retire or like, you know what, I think we're gonna retire. Just retire. Just say, no, you know what, dude, nah, we're not gonna play these games, bro. We're champion and bye. Because there's nothing left. Yeah, dude, it doesn't really make sense to go through this gaggle of dipshits we got at heavyweight. You know,
No, I mean like, and that's not a knock on Zhilei Zhang or Hergovich or all these other like contenders out there, but
they
like
gotta all battle each other
yeah,
to
and that's gonna happen too, and that's always been happening. When we saw this fight for the IBF mandatory challenger position or whatever, I remember stuff like that happening back in you can think about that from like the early '90s the 90s up into the 2000s when they would always have like these elimination fights for the number one contendership. Hell, I think on pay-per-view wasn't Chris Bird and Maurice Harris um like the main undercard fight for one of those Lennox Lewis title fights or some shit back then.
That's sounds right. Yeah.
That was like the mandatory challenger, probably for the IBF one, because that's what Bird ended up winning.
Yeah, and that's what Lewis wound up. Yeah, not. Yeah, he was like, "Fuck that fight."
So, to give you an example, I mean, that was, but like he made it apparent, like he wants Fury. He knows what the biggest fight is out there. Do I think Fury wished that Joshua was going to be the winner because of the money and everything else that was going to come with it? Absolutely, because of think about it. You know what I mean? They're both from the UK. The history behind it already, the rivalry that's already been built, definitely. But and I also think he realizes that Usyk is the more difficult opponent. But I mean, you know,
I agree. No, I agree on all points, dude. And on top of that, on a logistical level, they've both recently fought in either Dubai or Saudi Arabia.
yeah,
And so, I mean, like, I know that's not the same country or set of people. I'm not trying to be ignorant like that, but opening up like the Middle East when that's kind of considered somewhat taboo, and
mhm.
they've both shown that they're willing to fight out in that area, at least on that level, that would not have been a problem. That wouldn't have been, a showstopper. But yeah, dude, I don't know. I don't really know that fight happens. If it does, great. If not, it'll get ironed out. The division always gets ironed out one way or another, and it's pretty clear though that Usyk is the man right now. Um, yeah, I wish he were around a little bit more, but I understand. That being said, who did you think won that Philip Hrgovic Zalil Zhang? How did you? I mean, I know you weren't like scoring intently or whatever, dude, but how do you think that ended? That should have ended up.
Actually, I thought Zhang edged him. It was a
I did
very
too.
close fight, but I thought Zhang did the better work on the inside. Hrgovic did a lot of good work himself, but Zhang, the punches that he landed had much more effect. He had Hrgovic. If he was just able to step it up a little more, I thought he could have got him out of there. But at the end of it, Zhang really impressed me, and I thought he edged it by a close margin. I'm not gonna be like it was an out and out robbery, but it was a fight that I thought Zhang won by at least a couple of points. And I
I
hope
agree.
that
I
he
agree.
came back too, man, because like he will make for good fights with anybody in division.
I was pleasantly surprised because I've seen Zhang. You've seen him too. We've seen him a couple times, and it's not that he looked bad. It's just that the level of his opposition in a number of those fights was not good. So it's like you don't really know what it means. Like you don't really know if he's any good or not. So
So,
I was pleasantly surprised because we know that Hrgovic is obviously limited, but but talented and can punch a bit. And Zhang went in there and was, I felt like the vast majority of the rounds that were won clearly were won by him.
totally, absolutely,
And
yeah,
that
yeah,
he found, especially early on, he figured out how to kind of like maneuver very well. And it's for a guy that size, he's surprisingly quick, surprisingly,
and he knows how to
maneuverable.
put his punches together, man. He's really good with his
He's
combination.
throwing a lot of punches, so it's totally understandable how he was just gassed down the stretch. I mean,
I mean,
sucked, but at the same
he took
time,
a
it's a
good
big
shot.
boy.
And the thing is, man, like Hrgovic was looked upon by everybody because it was so difficult for him to find an opponent for his for the IBF mandatory shot that like they got down to Zane. And Mannix really pushed home the point that he's the most avoided fighter on the planet. It seems like or whatever. But like, um, Zhang, just like you said, bro, when he really won those rounds, he won those rounds. And when he hurt Hrgovic, like he was able to really, Hrgovic looked like he was really teetering on the verge of being stopped. Like Hrgovic would be able to like control the majority of a part of a round, and Zhang would hit him and then start unloading a few combinations. All of a sudden, the control not only went swung in Zhang's direction, but like it was even more dominant in his way than what Hrgovic was just doing. You know what I mean? And because when Hrgovic was landing a few combinations, Zhang was still with him. It's just that Hrgovic was, getting a little bit of the better of the exchanges. So
Yeah, he was like getting in and out a little bit better in a
yeah,
number of the
yeah, yeah,
rounds. Yeah.
yeah. But it was a really good fight. You know what I mean? And it's not one I expect to go. And yeah, it's going to be run back because I think Hrgovic now is obviously going for his
Yeah, he's
title.
gonna take that W and run.
Yeah, yeah, totally. But Zhang, To his credit and to my close friend Terry and Tommy Lane, their credit, he really upped his stock there because of what happened in the Jerry Forrest fight, where we almost watched a guy die in the middle of the ring with all the factors going on in it. Um, he really pulled himself out of that because there was a lot of questions. People really thought, was he just a flash in the pan? Was he a nobody? Well, all this other bullshit, yada yada yada.
Yeah, and
But
it turned out there was obviously much more to the story than we realized. Yeah.
exactly. And he put on a hell of a performance, man. And with the division kind of as open as it is, like, yeah, we got Usyk at the top and, Fury as a question mark and there's Wilder. But Zhang fits in with any of his guys. Zhang would make a great fight with Andrew Ruiz. I'd watch that in a heartbeat. Yeah, love to watch Zhang. That'd be a banger, wouldn't it?
Well,
Imagine
hey,
Zhang
yeah,
against,
Zhang's gonna be there. Like he ain't gonna be running from him, so they'd meet head on.
that would be a hell of a fight. Zhang against Ortiz, Zhang Wilder.
And Andy Ruiz is looking good too. So I mean, I don't
Yeah,
know if he's gonna pull the trigger, but he's at least physically, he's looking good.
that would be a fun ass fight, man. That would be a fun ass fight. I'm saying he fits in well with anybody because he makes for a fun. He has a fun style. He's not going to run for you, and he meshes well with any individual.
Aris Pina, matchmaker. That's a good fight, dude. I'll take
Hey
that
man,
fight.
I worked for promoters before, bro. I kind of know the, you know what I mean. I got a little touch.
Hey, anybody listening in, just saying.
I don't want to be a matchmaker.
Never mind if you're listening in, don't hire him.
Please, God, no. Like I said, I work for promoters, so I see how matchmakers are treated. No.
Yeah, that is a fucking tough job.
I'm
I'm
too
not that I've
sensitive
done
for
it,
that.
but I know it's a tough job.
I'm too sensitive for that, man. I would not be able to handle. I would definitely end up swinging on somebody that would give me a hard time for something quick. Straight up.
Yeah, but you've already been talked to fresh by every fucking promoter and manager in the business, and when you work for said shit, dude. So it's like
Ed and Lou and everybody else, but they're all.
yes, you already know.
Exactly. I just know. I've seen it.
It was a bummer, dude, because I thought that Zhang won too. I thought that he should have gotten that decision. And on top of that, I mean, we're a little bit biased because Terry and Tommy Lane, nice dudes. You'd like to see them get that W as well. But shit happens, and I'd love to see it run back. But like you said, I think that's probably not going to happen. However, at the very least, it was a good outing, and it was a pretty big platform to give an outing. Like give that kind of outing on. It was an entertaining fight, and it wasn't anything that I don't think it's going to count against Zhang at all. You know what I mean? Like
no, if anything, again, it raised his stock because no one I think expected performance from him. Everybody expected him to either stop him or beat him up or be like it wouldn't be that competitive. And Zhang definitely raised his profile. And like I said, and like you agree, he fits in well with anybody. I'm not gonna say he's gonna outright win, but anyone, I mean, like, look how many opportunities a guy like Gerald Washington has had over the years. I would just give him as an example, not a,
no, for sure,
not an awful fighter in the least, but like just clearly a guy who's a level below everybody else, and how many times he's been featured. And if he can be
that's true
like that, why not Zane?
No, that's true. That's totally true.
Yeah.
No, I'd love to see him again. I think he's like 39, so I'm 39, so I'm not even trying to talk shit, But
I mean,
point being that he's
too, and he hasn't, and like you said too, he hasn't taken a lot of
that's true.
In his career, so
that's true. He might have a little bit more time left than the average 39-year-old. But I'd love to see what happens.
Yeah.
But actually, before we head out too, one last thing. I mean, it's kind of a shout out to New England, shout out to the Northeast area, our boy Gray, Gray Johnson
Popeye?
for Boxrec. Yeah, Popeye Rivera, dude, went in there and gave a pretty good account of himself against Badu Jack, who we eternally give a pass to for reasons untold. I mean, it was a pretty decent fight, and Popeye Rivera did much better than a lot of people thought he would do. Badu Jack's a tough guy to figure out, man. He's like a guy that can fight up or down who's level opposition sometimes.
Probably a little past it now.
And he's kind of long in the tooth. Like he was already a little bit, I want to say when he was a prospect, he was already like in his like late 20s or something. So I mean
I was ringside when he got starched.
So, I remember that. It was like it was like 90 seconds or something like that. It was rough, dude. So it's been a while, and he's gone through a lot. He's had already had some surprising moments in his career and whatnot. I mean, he looked good for a good chunk of the fight, but then started.
Pro. At least he got rid of Lou Del Val.
Yeah, that's true.
But here's one, man. Before we go, a little historical question. A lot of people always want to like bring this up, and especially on Twitter, they always want to compare it to where do you rank now Usyk and Holyfield? Not gonna say head to head because Holyfield still will come ahead, obviously, but in my opinion, but like when you put their cruiserweight at cruiserweight at least, where do you compare them to? That's the best way to put it. Because
I
Usyk's
think
still a heavyweight, it still has to be determined.
I think Usyk had a had a more impressive and more difficult cruiserweight run than Evander Holyfield, like pretty much without question.
Yeah,
The cruiserweight division that he got through was a tough division. We were just talking about like it sucks because cruiserweight, the nature of cruiserweight and how much money surrounds cruiserweight at heavyweight and sometimes at light heavyweight, that it winds up getting forgotten. And so it's tough to build up credentials at cruiserweight, and it's on top of that, it's usually not a very deep division. Usually it's pretty shallow. Every so often, though, we get a nice little burst of activity in cruiserweight. And that's what happened about, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago was when it first started really like filling out, especially on the European level, which is just kind of the nature of the division, I guess. But a number of the fighters that he went through, dude, these were bad dudes in and of themselves, and also did some, were able to accomplish some shit outside of Oleksandr Usyk or once he left. So I mean, I think there's no question Usyk's cruiserweight run was better, but I mean, you can't compare the heavyweight runs at all, obviously. But I mean, yeah, I think that they're somewhat comparable as fighters as far as being able to, move from cruiserweight up to heavyweight successfully.
I mean,
Usyk,
they're
obviously,
clearly the two best cruiserweights that ever lived, and I,
yeah,
I'm one of the people that kind of unlike think the cruiserweight division is like it's easy to make fun of them or just like knock on them or whatever, but like it's kind of underrated, man. They had some really really good fighters in there over the years. It just wasn't
yeah,
a really
man.
high profile division, and
It's like
especially
heavyweights who actually move their hands. I mean,
yeah, yeah, and there were some really good fighters in there, like, but those two clearly stood out. But I mean, I always found it interesting. Everyone's always comparing. And I agree with you too, man. Like Holyfield didn't have bad competition at cruiserweight. Like Carlos De
no, it wasn't
Leon,
awful.
I would say Carlos De Leon, his stock definitely has dropped over the years compared to and since like the rise of other guys like Usyk or the his contemporaries like Bradis and other guys like that. But like De Leon though, I would still rate in like the mid to lower top 10 cruiserweights of all time. Ozzy Ocasio, who he didn't win a belt from, he was just a title offense, but still, a guy who was a top heavyweight, a tough
Very,
heavyweight contender.
very solid fighter, yeah.
Yeah, and a former cruiserweight champion.
And Cowie, obviously.
Howie, I mean, well, that's still considered. I don't give a fuck who anyone says. That's still the best cruiserweight fight ever.
Oh, it's
Holy,
incredible cruiserweight
and
fight. Yeah, the
Holyfield
first
almost
one's a
died
great
after
fight.
the fight. People forget Holyfield legitimately almost died after the fight. Like Frazier almost died against Ali. Like, it was that much of a grueling fight. But like him and Ricky Parkey, I mean, look, man, Parkey ended up not having a great record and got beat by most of the guys he ended up fighting. But like at that point in time when he fought Holyfield, he was a tough guy and he came in and he was swinging for the fences. He was a tough guy and he would have been tough for anyone else in that era. So whatever. But like you said, man, there are levels to this. And Usyk, I think the cruiserweight division had grown so much when Usyk finally was around that, like, yeah, the level
It
that
just
they are
filled out better, yeah.
yeah, totally, totally. It
Yeah,
was
so I
just pretty
mean,
cool to watch a guy like Holyfield just dominate the way he did and find someone that was that good back then.
oh yeah, no question, dude. So I mean, I think that they're pretty comparable in that regard. And like I said, I wish Usyk would stick around for longer, but I get it. And on top of that, having so much of an amateur career, like dude, that I would imagine that's really got to take it out of a fighter. Like you've been doing this for so long.
Totally.
Like, you don't want to keep doing this shit. Like, damn, dude. At least with Usyk,
What else is there to accomplish unless he beats Fury? Because I mean, Joshua was considered his toughest. He said Joshua was considered the toughest guy he fought. He's the champion now, and now he's considered the ring champion at heavyweight, like he was ring champion at cruiserweight. And yeah, the list of
my
accomplishments.
question, my question is, what does Usyk do if he does retire? Like, does he just start showing up at random fight cards in like a fucking tuxedo shirt and assless chaps? Does he
I
just
mean,
start?
my hope is
What
that
the
like
fuck's he gonna do?
one day I'm on vacation with my girl somewhere out, in Europe, wherever, and I end up on a beach, and Usyk just happens to be there, breakdancing to some house music, and I just join him.
Yep, dude. And then he
And
takes your girl.
we just take. Well, I mean, who am I going to stop him? But then, who am I to stop him? What am I going to do with that? That's just like any other old time fighter who decides to make a pass. Like, what am I going to do?
Women are helpless against that fucking this thing right here with the plumage that he's got going on. Women
Dude,
are
he looks
helpless.
like an old either Street Fighter or Saturday Night Slam Masters, or there's so many other like Sega, Super Nintendo video game references.
He looks like the bad guy from the Fifth Element.
Yeah, you can say he kind of. Well, I mean, Zangief from Street Fighter had the mohawk, so he can't really put it that way. But like, you know what? You know who he looks like? Did you remember playing Double Dragon as a kid?
Yes.
Yeah, he looks like one of the muscle-bound dudes
With the MC Hammer pants.
Not a Dobo.
The MC Hammer pants.
Yeah, and he had the.
Yeah. Oh, what was that one's name? Roper? Was that Roper?
Because Adobo was the one that looked like Mr. T with the mohawk, and then
he was all like weird looking. Yeah. No, damn, I might have to go play that shit because I got that shit. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, but like he looks like one of the Double Dragon characters from back then with the whole streak of hair coming up.
He's a character, dude. He even managed like a fairly funny interview after all of that nonsense. Like I gotta hand it to him. I
love him. Did you remember that? Do you remember seeing he was carrying like a Eeyore or some shit around that whole fight week? And a reporter asked him about it, and he said that his daughter gave it to him and told him that he had to hold on to it close to him wherever he went, so that's why it was with him.
Gotta stick to that, dude. You make that promise, you gotta fucking stick to
it. Dude, that's just wholesome shit.
Yeah, the dude's a goofball for sure. He's definitely crazy, but no, it was a strange event overall. But the fights themselves, I don't really have too much of a complaint. The fights were fairly competitive, fairly entertaining.
Yep.
It was a fairly good heavyweight championship card, if I'm being honest. But Oleksandr Usyk, man, what a fighter!
Hey, man, when that photo was taken of Usyk in the audience staring AJ down after whatever win that he had back in the day, that was a sign of things to come. And people were speculating back then. Now we have a clear winner and champion, and I'm happy for it. At least, as long as you don't think about the sanctioning bodies and who's going to strip who and all this other stuff, because that's how we're going to get another Charles Martin IBF champion again. But like, is he still around?
I thought he just fought the other day or something, like a week or two ago or something, didn't he? I could have sworn.
I can't keep up with it, but
well,
regardless, we know Usyk is the best right now. We know Usyk is the champion, and all roads hopefully lead to Tyson Fury. So that's it.
It's a fight we'd all love to see. It's the fight we need if they are going to fight. If not, fuck off, whatever. Just let everybody else have a stab. But dude, it was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. I appreciate you going over with me too, man.
Yeah, man. Sometimes we got to talk about the news, not just history. But we will be back with history later this week.
Mm-hmm. We will have more history. But yeah, dude, sometimes we got to cover the contemporary stuff if we have to. Heavyweight championship fight, got to do it. No, dude, I appreciate it. I do. Hey, everybody who listened in, we appreciate you. And if you did listen in on one of these podcast apps here, please subscribe, give us a rating, leave a comment. We appreciate that stuff. But if you watched on YouTube, thank you. Subscribe, leave a comment, whatever any of that reply stuff entails, we appreciate that. We're also on social media, however, though. We're on Facebook, Knuckles and Gloves Podcast on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, but we're also individually on Twitter. I think we kind of spend a little bit more time social media on Twitter that way. So my buddy Aris is on Twitter as Punch Zone Aris. Me, Patrick Connor, I'm there as Patrick M. Connor. So catch us there, and I'll catch you later, Aris.
Have a good one.
Bye, everybody.